What's up, everyone? This is the Next Tape Podcast, episode 48 with Mikel, and
Tanyka.
where we have conversations on different topics. So this is going to be something different for us. And what is it, Tanyka?
We're going to be having a conversation about books.
Books.
We're just going to have fun about books.
Yeah, books. I don't know where I was going with that.
I don't know either.
But yeah, we're going to be reading.
We're not going to be reading, but we're going to be talking about books.
Reading books. I'm playing, guys. We're going to be talking about books, like Tanyka just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to be talking about, books in general, or just books, or we're going to have somebody on this episode.
So I don't know what Mikel's planning on doing for what he's going to talk about, but for me, I'm going to be talking about like just my journey with books. Maybe unlock people's core memories. Maybe you've read some of the books I've read. And we're also going to have a guest, kind of doing a guest segment at the end of this episode with an author. So we're going to do that. So that's at least what I can say for me. I don't know what Mikel has cooked up on his end, but
it's just going to be something small for me, possibly, on my, journey and how I got, into like reading books and every single thing.
So should I go first?
Yeah, go first.
Oh, wait. So my journey with books. I love books. And I mean, I should probably start reading more. I keep telling myself that. But I love books. I love the journey, the escapism that you get with books. But again, like as a kid, I think a lot of us can probably relate with this. Is you'd have your parents kind of being like, read a book. And you'd read a book. And I think like what kind of gave me the push and the love for reading, which is so crazy, was a Mary Kate and Ashley book that I had in my possession at the time. One of those like detective type books that they had. And that was kind of my entrance into my love for books. Yeah, I remember just kind of sitting on the couch at my grandparents' house. They had like a little like armchair that I always used to like swing my legs over one of the arms of the chair and just like I just sat there and just read. That's what I always would do. It's kind of just a core memory of mine. So that's kind of was my love kind of started from there. And then I guess throughout my journey with books, I would read books like the Heartland series, which again, if people know the Heartland series, you might know it from either reading the books or there's also a series that's on CBC or Netflix. So that was kind of my love. Started with Heartland there. I started reading those books from my school library, actually. But I do own all the books now. But somewhere in my home, I own all the books. So it's kind of was like my love with that, and also created my love for horses as well, which is probably how I came to a point where I actually would ride a horse later in life, which was really fun. But I would read books from like Danielle Steele or Mary Higgins Clark, which I think I feel like, especially with women, I feel like most women have read at least one Danielle Steele book or one Mary Higgins Clark book. So that was kind of my thing. I can't necessarily pinpoint one particular book with them, but like I have Danielle Steele. I still read her, to this day. So one book in particular that kind of like, I don't know if necessarily pushed me into my interest with like, ancient Egypt or whatever. But there was a book by Anne Rice, which she's kind of very famous for doing like Interview with a Vampire and that kind of like that's, you know, it's one of her books. I never read that book, but there was a book that my mom, I think, actually had, and then I read it when I was older. Was a book by Anne Rice called The Mummy or Ramses the Damned. It was such a good book that like it's kind of the kind of typical type storyline. A woman falls in love with the mummy, but he's supposed to be like really hot. So it was like, but it was a really fun book. I think I read that book twice. I really enjoyed that book, but it was kind of fun. Now I don't know if Mikel, if you know these particular books. There's another book that I started.
Yeah.
Not that book. These series of books that I started reading when I was in school. I got it from my school library.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know The Adventures of the Bailey School Kids? See, it was like a series of books. I'm going to name off some of the books.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to name off some of the books. So these were books that I read as a kid, and I think the very first book that I ever read from this series was my teacher wears polka dot dress or something, like a vampire wears polka dot dress. It's very kind of like this play on the children's stories and mythical type things. So another kind of books that they had is Santa Claus doesn't mop floors, Boogeymen don't play football, Werewolves don't go to summer camp. These are all the Bailey Adventure School kid books. Mermaids don't run track. Genies don't ride bicycles. Like I read all of these books. What else was there? Cupid doesn't flip hamburgers. Aliens don't wear braces. I didn't read that one. I don't know what that one is. But yeah, like those are just some of the books that were available to me in school. And the first one was the teachers don't wear polka dot dresses or whatever, or polka dots. And it was just like, it's supposed to make you think like they're like janitor Santa and this person's a mermaid and like it was fun kid type books. And I read all of them from like the age of like 8 or 9 till about 10, 11. Read all of them.
Did
They were
you?
fun.
So, do you favor more towards fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction, usually, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. I know, because life is too real that I don't want to deal with life. I want to just deal with.
mm.
For me, I want the escapism, and I feel like you
Oh
don't
yeah, that's what
get.
you just confirmed. Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like you don't get the escapism when you're reading nonfiction. This
Mhm.
is me, though.
That's what. That's how people feel about video games. Like they want to
Yeah,
escape in that world. I
yeah,
don't. I don't feel that way. No, I don't. I don't. But like there's certain people that do feel that way that you feel about books. So
yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, maybe this can be considered a little more real or not necessarily nonfiction, but depending on who
Mhm.
you ask, might, think differently about it being fiction. I don't know if you know the series, the Left Behind series. Do you know that series?
I think I seen the book somewhere.
Yeah.
I seen the book somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Left Behind series, you can get them like more geared to kids, and then you can also get the more adult version. I owned the more kid version of Left Behind series just because I was a little younger when this book came out. My grandpa actually has the adult versions of the Left Behind series. And the Left Behind series, for those who don't know, is basically like what happens when God comes and they ascend to as we've been promised and whatever. And then they have the people who don't ascend, who are quote unquote left behind. So that's basically what it's about. They're actually, even if like you're, depending on what you believe in, if you believe in anything at all, you can kind of take some of that out. Like, you don't have to really, it doesn't have to be just a Christian type book. It can be for anybody. They're actually really good if, like, I mean, again, I'm talking about books that have been out now for like 20 years. But if you are interested in reading them, they're actually incredible books. The Left Behind books, they're incredible. So there's that. Of course, I've also read Hi God, It's Me, Margaret, of course, because I'm a girl. Like, I feel like every girl who has to experience puberty has read this book. My mom read this book. My mom passed it down to me, and I read the book. Like, it was forced upon me. My mom literally at a certain age, and I think I was maybe 11, 12. My mom literally gave me this book and said, "You're reading this book."
Mm.
Why? She's like, "Nope, you're reading this book." Like, I had no choice. And that's probably going to be the same when I have daughters. It'll be the same thing. We still own, like, that book is somewhere in my house. Like, that is, it's a good book. Now I'm going to go into a world of books that are also movies that I fell in love with when I was 10 years old and has forever left an imprint on my life ever since. And I do want to stress with this, because I'm going to talk a bit about these books, and in particular books that came after them. I want to say right now that I am not an advocate for anything this author has said. In, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I am not an advocate for her at all. I don't agree with her views. It's a damn shame that she feels the way she does about things. But just because I'm mentioning these books and the books that have happened after them does not mean that I am an advocate for her, or I support anything she says. But I'm always going to be a Potterhead. So I am talking Harry Potter. I am talking J.K. Rowling. And I just want to stress that Harry Potter has forever, like I've said, been a part of my life since I was 10. I've read all the books, have all the movies. And where were you when Dumbledore died? Like, I literally remember how I felt, what I was doing, where I was when I read that part of the book where Dumbledore died. And I'm like, it's just one of those things, right? But I love these books and I love these movies, and no one, not even J.K. Rowling, can take that away from me. These are books that I still own. I'm very protective over everything Harry Potter that I own. So, which is basically just the books and the movies. So, yeah, it's forever a part of me. It's Harry Potter. And with, like, Harry Potter obviously came to an end many, many years ago now. I remember my mom bought me, and again, this was before all the problematic shit came about with her. But when she did stop, obviously, with Harry Potter, she did this book called, what's it called now? Sorry, I gotta remember something. Oh yeah, The Cuckoo's Calling, which is her very first book that she did that was not directly affiliated with anything Harry Potter. And I mean, it was a really good book. It kind of solidified that she didn't need Harry Potter to still be a great author, but it's just unfortunate that, again, problematic author, but she did a really great job with that book. I thought it was a really good book. And with that, she also then, as kind of think a lot of us know, especially then when we were obviously still fans of her, she did a book under another name. That was the Strike novels. And she wrote them under the name Robert Galbraith. And we're all like, who's that? Like, we don't know who that is. Turns out it was J.K. Rowling the entire time because the books blew up. Like, they were like very popular before we all knew it was her. And it was like the strike novels. I love them. And
Mhm.
I'm currently going through an issue, an internal issue with the fact that she has made more books since the problematic stuff. And I want them because I love the series. I have two of the books and I wanted, like, I'm like, oh, another one's coming. And then I kind of dropped off my zeitgeist a little bit, but I'm like, oh, there's more. And now I want them, but I'm like, but then I'm supporting her. So what do I do?
Mhm.
I don't know what to do. I'm trying to figure it out. I'll
So
figure it out.
they're renewing the movie. No, well, not renewing, but I think they're
I know.
redoing
I
these.
know.
Are you going to support those or you're not?
She is not affiliated with the remake of the they're doing a series.
Oh, okay.
She's not at all affiliated.
Okay.
Yep. So it's more of, do I want to? I don't know yet. To see. Just because I'm a person who isn't used to change and I'm used to what I'm used to. So if like those things aren't as I want them, then I might have an issue watching it. So, but at least like if I do, like she's not a part of it. Just like she wasn't a part of the reunion that they did on Max or Crave, depending on where you are in the world. She wasn't a part of that either. So like I think a lot of us felt okay to partake and watch those things because she wasn't a part of it.
Mm.
Yeah, she hasn't been a part of the making of a lot of these things. Even the Fantastic Beasts movies, she hasn't been closely involved with those either. So yeah, like we as fans are okay with taking those things in because she's not a part of it. But to move off of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, I want to take another shift to another series that has also been very dear to me, and that's the Twilight series. I feel like Mikel should have been expecting me to say Twilight at some point,
I was
but
actually expecting you to say Goosebumps, but that
Goosebumps,
can.
I was never a fan of Goosebumps books. The
Okay.
show, yes, but not the books.
Okay.
So no, Goosebumps is not a part of mine, but
Mm.
Twilight is a part of me for sure. I went through a health thing too when the second movie was coming out, because that's kind of when I
Mm.
hopped on, was with the second movie.
Hmm.
And I was going through a health thing, and I'm like, all I literally did, I kid you not, all I did was read those books, all four of them, which like they get bigger as you go along. And all I did was watch the first, I think, did New Moon come out at that point? Remember, I must have been only access to the first one, and all I did was watch the first movie. That's all I did was watch the first movie and read the books, and that's all I did for like 3 weeks. And it was such a special part of me. But again, if you are a Harry Potter fan and a Twilight fan, the running joke with that is, well, Edward Cullen died as a wizard but came back to life as a vampire. That's all there is to it. And of course, Mikel does not know what I'm talking about, but that is okay. You out there do, if you're a fan of both. So yeah, like that's kind of,
I
you're gonna
see.
say something?
I see one movie, Twilight. That's
Which
based.
one? I'm curious to know which
I think it
one.
was the very first one, and
The very first one.
I remember.
See,
I
that
remember.
pisses me off though. That's only the first one you watched, because the first one was like the one that was furthest from the book, whereas the others were a lot closer to what happened in the book. In the books, they were a lot closer. Like there were characters added that were not in the books. There was things that, like, it was not as close to the books as the others were.
Mhm.
And it was, I I don't know. Like, I love the first movie too. Don't get me wrong. Like my favorite one of them, honestly, it frustrates me because I think again, every fan of a series like this, whether it's Twilight, Harry Potter, even, which I am going to talk very briefly about, 50 Shades, there's always like one that's like your favorite book or your favorite movie, and whether or not, like for me, Harry Potter, my favorite book was Goblet of Fire. My favorite movie was Goblet of Fire. Like it was incredible. They did perfect. The for Twilight frustrates me because I'm like, my favorite book was Eclipse, which is the third one. And then my favorite movie from Twilight was actually Breaking Dawn Part 2 was my favorite. It's my favorite one because they butchered the third movie. It just wasn't good. I don't know what it was. It was like the acting was off, and it wasn't even just like one particular person. It was everybody. Everyone. It's like the style of the movie was just it just ugh, I just didn't like it. Anyways, don't get me started.
Yeah, it kind of looked cheap, in my opinion.
It was because it was the first one. It was cheap. It was cheap in comparison to the others.
I mean, I feel like, well, when I looked at the trailers for the others, they looked just as similar or the same as the.
Totally
No,
different
really?
feel. Totally different feel. Each movie has a different feel, and I think like again, if you're a fan of the movies, you kind of know this. Each movie had a different director.
Mhm.
Whereas like with Harry Potter, for the most part, over the span of the 8 movies, they maybe only had like 2 directors, 2 different directors for the span of all the movies. So it kind of gave this more consistent feel to each movie. Whereas with the Twilight movies, each one of them had a different director, except for the final 2, because they were filmed together, but they were split in half. So basically, kind of think of it, each book that correlated to a movie had its own director. And it was because of it that you kind of got these different feels because of it. Personally, for me, I always felt like the best director was the one who did the second movie, who also directed the movie Juno as well. He was probably one of the better directors, kind of gave it more of that feel that it like you feel like Twilight had in the books. It was better, but it got confusing because each movie had a different director, which then constituted different feels for each movie. But I do agree, the first one did feel cheap, but that's because it just was.
Yeah, it was
they didn't
first.
have the budget that the others did.
Yeah. So, yeah.
The budget, especially for the fourth one, like they were in different locations. It's like, I mean, what I will say about the first movie is that they were more true to the book in terms of location, whereas the others weren't as like they were filming in like Canada and whatever, so it was a little different.
Maybe because they had like a budget, they had to like cut off some things, possibly.
Not
Really? No?
really. They didn't really
Okay.
have to cut things out. It was just a different feel.
Okay.
But it was yeah, like I wouldn't say the movies were cheap. It was just, especially the first one, it was the budget was different. Yeah. And yeah. So I also look at it through the lens of this was those early aughts. It was when the movie started, right? Or late aughts, I should say. So it's also going to it with that is it had a different feel because of that too. The movies have evolved so much. And
they have. Yeah.
So again, kind of off of Twilight, Stephanie Meyer, she did another book called The Host. The book, incredible book. The movie, meh. It's meh. It wasn't the greatest movie. She was trying to make Twilight happen. It didn't happen. did not happen. It wasn't a great movie, but the book was incredible. It was a standalone book. It was an incredible book. And then, of course, she also came out very recently with Midnight Sun, which is a part of the Twilight series, which is a very much anticipated book for fans, a book that I think we all thought we were never going to get. And that's a story that I don't need to go into, but let's just say someone on the set of Twilight leaked the book and then it just never happened. So it was really incredible to see like it finally happened, and it was very much worth the wait, personally for me, but that's just me. So moving off of that, have you heard of the book Bone Collector or the movie Bone Collector?
No, I haven't.
Really?
No.
Okay, so Bone Collector is a book and a movie. Book written by Jeffrey Deaver. The movie starred Denzel Washington, Angelina Jolie, Queen Latifah, but a bunch of other people. It's a very good movie. Incredible book. But I was first introduced to Jeffrey Deaver by a little book called The October List, which is more one of his more recent books. And it was so good. Such a good book that I wanted more. And Jeffrey Deaver has standalone books away from a series that are called the Lincoln Rhyme series, which is what Bone Collector is a part of. Is a part of the Lincoln Rhyme series. And I kind of just dove in deep with the Lincoln Rhyme series. I have probably at this point 7 or 8, and I'm not done. Like, I'm still going to be collecting as much of the books as I can and getting my hands on as much of the books that I can, because they're very good. Jeffrey Deaver is a very good author, so I highly recommend him. And I guess it's kind of more recently I've read books like Where the Crawdads Sing, which is a movie as well now too. If you watch the movie's incredible, but the book's even better. So I would definitely, if you haven't seen the movie yet, read the book first and then watch the movie. But it's really good. And I've also read a book that's actually by a podcaster. If you're a Morbid fan, you know the book, you know the author. It's a book called The Butcher and the Wren, which was, I wasn't sure how I would feel about reading a book by a podcaster, but Elena did such a great job with this book, and her second book is coming very soon. It's actually coming out this year, which I'm so excited for. It's called The Butcher Games, coming out in September. I'm so excited for it. It's such a good, the book was incredible. I could not put it down. I kept turning the page. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good.
I feel like when it comes to not fiction. Is it fiction? Fiction, yes.
Fiction, yeah.
Fiction books. In terms of listening to audiobooks, I think they're, in my opinion, they're a lot better to listen to and enjoy than nonfiction, because you can just feel the voice and the passion of the voice actor.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm very old school. I like to read a book. It's really hard for me to.
Don't get me wrong. Like when it comes to like nonfiction books, that's what I would rather read those. But when it comes to like fiction books, I feel like you just like you're trying to vision yourself and the story when it comes to reading like those romance or fantasy or those types.
Yeah, no, I get that people like to listen to Audible or whatever.
Yeah.
I never did the Audible thing, but I definitely did like the Kobe, like when they did the Kobe, or like the I don't even know if those things are around anymore. But it's
kind of still around.
Whatever. I still didn't do it for me. I still wanted to hold that physical book in my hand.
Oh yeah.
So for me, like, it sounds like a great idea for some if that's something you're definitely into and want to do. For me, it's like I just want to hold that physical book in my hand and then have someone read it for me. I want to read it because that's just again, it's just I want to be able to do. And again, I'm going to mention the last book first, and I'll say this again. Don't judge me, but 50 Shades of Grey, the books suck. Don't get me wrong, they did suck, but the movies, personally, for me, I thought were good. But the books did. The books, I read them though because I enjoyed them.
Mhm.
And no, it did not change my sex life. Like some people, it did. I had friends who were like, "Oh my gosh, like I improved in my sex life." I'm like, what?
Mhm.
There's nothing in those books that I'm like, A, that maybe I want to do, or B, that I don't do already. So, like, it's whatever. But I enjoyed them. For me, reading 50 Shades of Grey had nothing to do with that. I actually was more intrigued with his story and like him evolving from this kind of sadist, if he wants to call himself a dom, to being able to actually fall in love and like tackle his demons, which I feel like are a lot more expressed in the book than they ever were in the movies.
Right.
I feel like that was actually very much of a disservice, but that was kind of the thing that really pulled me into the books. Wasn't so much about the sex, but anyways.
Mhm.
But so what I'm going to say here too is the make sure you're encouraging your kids to read a physical book, not just rely on Audible or anything like that. And it doesn't even have to be a physical book. If you want to have like a tablet, whatever, but make sure they're reading, because that was the whole thing about my mom wanting me to read. It had nothing to do with having that escapism or whatever else. It was the fact of you're enhancing your reading skills. That was the biggest thing, is you're enhancing your skill for reading. It helps with so much communication, writing skills, all of those things. It's so important to make sure that your kids are actually reading their books. I think that's so important. So yeah, like all of those things are great. I think that's something like, adults can use or whatever, it's fine. But I think like when you're talking kids and reading, they should be actually reading. Like reading is the skill of actually sitting there and using your eyeballs and like reading something on a page. So yeah, that's kind of this PSA on that, but that's my journey through book.
So I had like, two experiences in my life in terms of like reading books that influenced me into reading books. So one is reading Rainbow, the show, with the host LeVar Burton. When I used to watch the show all the time, he used to like, present all these like, books, and then you hear like the music with it, or you hear like, it was actually the first like time you hearing like, an audiobook through a TV at the time in the 90s, which is crazy, right? So
Yeah.
the author was just basically doing the audiobook through the TV, and then the animation would just from the book would just, you'll see it, and then it was amazing. A lot of the books I got was because of that show. And then if you don't know about this, Tanyka, we've been to school when we were kids. There must be like a book club.
Yes.
Or, called I think it's the Scholastic Book Club.
Yeah, they did Scholastic Book Club, or they also do the Scholastic Book Fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You remember that? Oh,
of course.
That was the most exciting part.
That's the most exciting part of the year, when you would get like the Scholastic flyer with books and stuff. Yeah. And then they also did the fair too. Like I don't know if they do the fair. Yeah.
The fair. Mm.
Plastic books were expensive, I will say.
Oh yeah, they were
They were
expensive,
expensive.
but you would see books like back then. You remember the book called "Love You Forever"?
No,
Oh, you never seen this book ever?
it
Ever?
doesn't ring a bell. No.
You probably seen the cover.
Okay.
Let me just remind you a little bit. I'll probably send it to you. But yeah, it's still everywhere. You'll see in your Salvation Army. I had that book as well. Let me just share it to you. Let me just get a copy link so I can copy the link and just send it to you. Yeah, it was a very popular book back in the 90s. I'll send that to you. Tanyka, there you go. It's right there.
No, yeah, that vaguely rings a bell. Oh, it's Robert Munch. Oh, okay, yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then other books such as, if you give a mouse a cookie. You remember that
Don't,
one?
don't make me have to remember every single book.
And another book, children's book by, is it Macer? Macer
Who?
Mir? Macer
Who?
Mir? Just a little critter collection. Do you
Okay.
remember that?
No.
Yeah, I remember that. You remember? All right, I'll give you something that you're familiar of.
Okay.
Franklin Goes to School.
Oh,
Remember those books?
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They also had a TV show on
Yeah,
House. Franklin. Oh man, Franklin. They had Franklin and they also had Timothy Goes to School.
yeah, Timothy. That
And Timothy Goes to School.
both good shows.
Oh man.
And then another book called The Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Yes, yes.
You remember that one?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that was another book. I had that book too. And then you had the Dr. Seuss books as well. Like
I have a book full of Dr. Seuss, but then I also have like the individual books. Oh, you know which ones I didn't mention? Berenstain Bears.
I was going to mention that last. Those books were yeah.
Berenstain Bears were lit.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Berenstain Bears.
And the Reading Rabbit books too.
Oh yes, the Reader Rabbit books. Yeah, I also had a game of the Reader Rabbit. I had like 3 different games of Reader Rabbit. Yeah.
And that's basically my journey as a kid. There's actually one more book that was placed in featured in classrooms. Hopefully you noticed. Please.
We'll see.
The Rainbow Fish.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I actually have that book.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Rainbow Fish was like right with I Love You Forever was right there with that book. It was very popular back in the day, and you could not go anywhere without seeing it. It's a very popular book for kids. So
you know which books also I didn't mention?
Yeah.
I can't remember if this is his name, but the Roger Hansen, I think is his name, books. I might have gotten his last name wrong, but it was like he did like the Mr. and Miss books, like Little Miss Naughty or Mr. Noisy or Mr. Hoppy.
Oh yeah. The Mr. Men. Yeah.
The Mr. Met. That's what they're called.
I'm just seeing those books right now. I was like,
love them.
Yeah. They're pretty simple. They were pretty simple books.
They were simple books.
Yeah.
But those books actually have a very special place in my heart. Because my mom actually bought me 3 of those books for my birthday when I was a kid. It was Little Miss Naughty, because I was a naughty kid. Mr. Noisy, which was actually more affiliated with my brother as time went on. And then there's another one. Mr. Messy, I think, was the other one.
Oh, yeah.
And the Little Miss Naughty one was the one that was really more about me, because I was, like I said, a naughty kid.
Right.
And That's actually something that when I was older, like
Mhm.
working, I remember being on the phone with my mom and I was walking around the path in Toronto, and there was like this store that is probably not there anymore since, especially since
Mhm.
COVID. But if people who are familiar, it was kind of more in the Exchange Tower part
Mm.
near First Canadian Place, but in the Exchange Tower. And there was a store that kind of had like specialty things. And
Yeah.
I kind of looked through the window of the store and I saw the cup, this teacup that said Little Miss Naughty on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm really like, oh. And my mom's like, what was wrong with you? And I told her, and she's like, oh, you know, you have to get that now, right? And I did, and I bought it. But then someone took it. I had it at work. And because of COVID and everything, I couldn't find it. I was so mad because I use that cup every day. I was so pissed. Anyway,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Those books like were really popular. I think I just had one. I don't know what it was.
mm.
I think I
I mean, I
borrowed it
read a
from the
lot of
library.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
You have it all?
I read, no, I didn't have them. They had them at school. So I read a lot of
Mm,
them. Like I read like Mr. Happy and
right.
like I read the ones that were at school, but the
Mhm.
ones I owned were those three that I
Mm.
mentioned. There's somewhere in my house, but yeah,
Yeah. And another one is like all by myself.
it
Um,
sounds familiar.
you might. It's the same one of the just little critter collection. It's the same author,
Okay.
Mercer. Merch. I'll send you the picture. Very familiar book. I think I had that one in my collection as well. Well, okay. I'll send you to it later. But
Okay.
yeah, that was my journey as a kid. Obviously, I went to the libraries and just like read some of these books, and a lot of fun memories because of reading Rainbow, and going to the book clubs at school, and then going to the library. Just reading a lot of these books were just like fun as a kid. So now as a teenager, I didn't read a lot of books at all. I just like watched a lot of shows.
I think that's
So like
typical.
yeah, very typical. But going until my adult years, I started like reading like comics, right? Obviously, you guys know about Marvel and DC and all that stuff. So I would read into like a lot of comics, included like Japanese manga. If you guys don't know what Japanese manga is, it's just basically a Japanese comic.
My brother reads
Uh,
those.
yeah,
Yeah.
and basically, I would read Dragon Ball, and then I would read, let me see, Naruto, and I think that would probably be the only two that I would read the most in my early on in my teen to late, not late, but like going into my adult years. But yeah, then as I'm going to my adult years, and now I started to read more nonfiction books. I started to read like more about, I would say, finances, business, healthy stuff like healthy foods and etc. It's well wellness books as well. I started going to like chapters, and then I started going back to the library a little more to read some books, to just learn more stuff, and feed my brain with knowledge, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's basically the gist of it. I think I feel like I had more fun, even though like I'm learning from these books. I feel like I had more fun when it was more towards like reading when I was a kid because like the books were more fun. But obviously I'm reading nonfiction books. See, I would rather read nonfiction books because like if I read a novel, I tend to just like not vision what's happening because I would rather read a comic than a novel because the pictures are right in front of you. You can vision what's going on versus what's going on in a regular novel book. What you read, Tanyka. So, and I would rather listen to a novel book that has like those type of elements like fantasy, romance, because like I said before, the voice actor, you know, visions the story from their voices, and they it's like listening to a movie, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And when you listen to it like that, it's just like it creates that vision in your head. So yeah, that's why I would rather read a comic than a novel. So yeah. So nowadays I just like read books to just like feed my brain basically. So yeah. So if you are a kid or an adult, just have fun reading. Just that's all I have right now. Yeah.
um,
It's not very much exciting like Tanyka. It's like like her story like from start to finish, but mine's like I said, was going to be short from the start. So
yeah. I mean, again, too, that I want to because you kind of brought this, well, vaguely brought this up, but to shout out to schools too, encouraging reading books and stuff. Like I had my love for like To Kill a Mockingbird because of books at school, and there was another book that I read in high school called Monster that was really, really good. And I hated To Catcher in the Rye. Sorry, that's what it was called, Catcher in the Rye. Hated that book. Hated it so much. Anyway, that's that.
yeah,
But
yeah. So many. Yeah, I guess there's so many good books out there. Like I mentioned, like the Goosebumps. Like you mentioned, the Twilights.
mhm.
So much books that you guys can read nowadays. Like health. If you're looking for something that that will improve your health, there's books out there for you. If you're looking for books that will pick your brain, it's out there. So if you're looking for celebrity books, which I don't go,
Yeah.
I don't hardly. The only two that I probably would just look for the most is Warren, and that's probably the only one. Warren Buffett, if you guys who know who he is. But like otherwise than that, that's the only. He's not really a celebrity. He's more of a public figure, in my opinion. But yeah, there's celebrity. There's like basically my favorites for dummy books. So like if you guys don't know anything, don't make the book offend you when it says for dummies, because there's like different types of books. Like there's different for travel.
For dummies have been around for
Oh yeah.
years and years and years and years. I don't think anyone takes offense to that.
Yeah. But like people look at that and it's like, are you calling me a dummy?
I don't think so. Those books have been around forever. I don't think anyone's offended by that.
But yeah, there's one for like math, subtraction. I remember I probably picked up one back in the day for math. I just looked at it for like a month, and then I just never went back to it because I already knew some of the like I studied the math in the for dummy book, and I just didn't need to use it anymore. But it taught me it gave me knowledge about, math and, etc. But yeah, there's different types of books out there for you to just like to have fun and to gain some knowledge and to learn about somebody's lives and also to be healthy. So yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah. So basically now we're just gonna transition into the segment with our guest, which I'll introduce him there. So that's what we're gonna head into now. Okay, so I'm here with a guest named Douglas. So Douglas, do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, hello, listeners. My name's Douglas Robbins. I'm an author. I have half a dozen books, and I can't tell you how many. I have half a dozen books in published in the pipeline, and working out those slowly as time provides.
Yeah. So what inspired you to kind of start writing books?
It seems like maybe a natural progression from where I was at. Excuse me. When I was a kid, I was really like observant, and I would kind of, as I got a little older, would jot just sort of ideas down, observations. And then when I was a teen, I was in a band, and my buddy was like, "Hey, you should write some lyrics." I was like, "Okay." So started writing some very like heavy-handed lyrics that my mother thought was quite amusing.
Interesting.
Because it was like too serious for a kid to be writing. And then, just progression, like, some poetry, and just started a little bit dabbling into, longer form, and just sort of, I guess it just kept going from there.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely interesting because I think, going from lyrics to writing books, it's different, but still have that creativity that is just, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what kind of books do you tend to write or even just gravitate to for your own personal use? Like, what's kind of the genres that you tend to dabble in?
Yeah. So I'll back up 1 second. So I had been writing, lyrics, observations, and I kept writing these observations, insights about, things and humanity and all these kind of things. I was like, well, what the heck kind of writer are you? You write little insights about things or whatever. And I was like, well, what is this all about? And it kind of came to me almost like this euphoric revelation. Like, these are all connected. All these ideas, all these insights, excuse me, are connected. There's a thread that runs through them all. And that's a larger piece that I've never finished, and I hope to finish in the next couple of years. But when I was trying to write it years ago, it was just too vast of an undertaking, and I didn't have the skill set or the muscle to be able to complete it. So hopefully in the next few years, I will be able to. But, I gravitate to things that have some sort of meaning, and there's something evocative in them. I'm not much for just sort of regurgitation and cliche. I'm really looking for a little bit more meat on the bone, something that has a little meaning, maybe reflects the humanity that I'm seeking. So earlier on, long ago, and this probably, spoke to me a bit, there was a great book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is, have you ever read it? It's sort of about a seagull, and all the seagulls are sort of acting the same, but he kind of wants to do his own thing and kind of go off and try different flight patterns and flapping his wings differently, and sometimes he fails and sometimes he succeeds. And I don't think I fully understood it at the time, but he was really talking about individuality and kind of breaking away from that kind of group thinking and just sort of becoming one of the pack. So that was obviously when you are trying to break away, there's going to be friction with some people, and you're going to stumble here and there, but at the same time you're honoring yourself. So I think books that have a little more meaning to me, that humanity. Another great book was Bridge Across Forever, which was another Richard Bach book, same guy who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but Herman Hesse book, Siddhartha, which is really how Buddha became Buddha, and Kristen Hanna book I read recently called Magic Hour. It was just fascinating. So great writing, can really captivate, obviously, and bring you to another world.
Yeah.
And that's the amazing thing about it. Time stops. There's no space and time. You're kind of in this other realm. And I think that's also where writing is for me. It's sort of the sacred space. And, we really have to honor it. We really have to protect it. It is the gift that we bring to the world, with whether it's writing, it's banjo, it's, painting, it's whatever it might be. We all have gifts. And quite often they got kind of pushed aside due to practicality of got to pay the bills or take care of the kids or whatever it might be. And that's the shame, is like, for me, society should really be honing this, honoring this, encouraging this in education and throughout, society. And this is the best of humanity. And when it kind of gets pushed aside, that's where you have trouble.
I agree. I think it is important to, we did mention in the beginning half of this episode that, reading is important and engages that part of your brain, whether it's your communication gets improved, or have that escapism, which is important for me with books. And also with writing as well. Like you're taught that in school and you're like, oh, I don't want to write anymore. I don't want to write this essay. I don't want to do this. Then as you get older, you start to value the fact that you had to do that.
Yeah.
It opens its creativity.
Yeah. And I think with writing and social media, it doesn't really matter what it is. We're either looking for ourselves, we're looking for a reflection of ourselves to connect to others. Most people feel like they're not connected, or we're looking to escape that. We don't want to think these thoughts anymore. We don't want to deal with this crap anymore, these day-to-day things. I want to escape into whatever. Go to some other place with orcs and wizards or whatever it might be. But like, at school, you're forced to write an essay on whatever. Maybe you're not interested in the subject or whatever it is. So, but maybe, like you find a creative writing class and you love it, or something you love. And, I always come back to, we have to hold on to the things we love, because that's really the best part of ourselves.
I agree. And that doesn't necessarily have to be reading or writing. It could be anything. Yeah. Whatever your passion kind of takes.
Could be bowling.
Bowling is fun.
Anyway.
So are you a self-published author?
Yeah. So I'm what, you call indie or self-published or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And for me, the difference is, when you're an indie or whatever you want to call self-published, you still want to put out a great product. So though it's not quote unquote traditional, I don't even know what that means, other than that they're the gatekeepers who stamp things a yes or no, good or bad, which is absurd because they've rejected some of the greatest books in history. All the J.K. Rowling books, like she could have Gone with the Wind, like endless books were rejected time and time again because these people quote unquote knew better. Well, obviously they didn't know better. They're just people, right? Critics, like everybody's a critic.
Yeah.
And so, as an indie writer, you want to have a great cover. You want to have great formatting. You want to make sure the editor knocked it out of the park. You want to do everything a traditional publisher would do to put out the best product. And, but the beauty of it is you get to control all the rights. Obviously, you get to have the final say in what's in there. But sometimes you have to let go of storylines or characters, or as Stephen King says, kill your babies. You got to let go of certain things sometimes for the piece. Mm-hmm. And that's what a good editor will do. So, at the end of the day, yes, it's indie or self-publishing, but it should be the same quality work either way.
Yeah. Do you find it difficult to be self-published? Like obviously you're not having that marketing the same way that a quote unquote published book is having. Like, do you have encountered any difficulties with that?
Well, I will answer it this way. So what I know about traditional as well, I mean, I know a lot of people in it, and I've kind of dabbled in it here and there, and I've obviously read quite a bit about it, is if you're not a big name, you're going to be doing all this yourself anyway. they're not going to be marketing for you and, running all this stuff for you unless you're a bigger name. So, and not to mention they take 90% of royalties.
Oh,
So
geez.
no, it's a challenge because anytime you're talking about discoverability and trying to get in front of people, I mean, writing is hard enough, and then you have to, figure out marketing and PR and all this kind of stuff. And, it's exhausting, and I can't do it all alone. I mean, it's too much. I always liken it to like, if you're a baseball player and like you're a great player, but then the front office calls you and says, hey, but can you also sell hot dogs and beer, and can you run the tickets and the hat stand, and like doing everything, it's just too much. So like you really have to kind of stay in your lane, if you will, and hire people who are smarter than you and further along to do those things if you can afford it. I mean, sometimes you just got to bootstrap it and figure it out, and it's not easy. I mean, I certainly don't have it really, completely figured out. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I mean, it's a different thing, but even like marketing this podcast, and I also have another podcast as well. It's like, it's difficult to get yourself out there, especially when you're in a world that's so much already there, similar to what you're already doing. And there's a saturation point, and obviously, I mean, books are on Amazon. That's the big dog. And there's so much competition and also a lot of people just throw crap out there hoping they're going to hit a home run, which they're not going to, but it just clogs, the system. But there are millions and millions of books on Amazon. So, how do you get noticed, and how do you, kind of rise to the top? And like I said, I haven't fully, figured that part out. I mean, I do okay with it, but I'd like to be doing a lot better. Yeah.
But it's a challenge. It's a daily challenge. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, no, it is.
But truth be told, even traditional books, I think the average is less than 100 books are sold. So it's not like, traditional books are hitting it out of the park. Traditional companies have gone much more to a model of, if you're a known entity, we're going to run with you. We'll publish you or whatever. But they're not taking the risks as much unless they're known people.
Right. So for maybe anyone out there who could be potentially writing their own books or want to start writing their own books, writer's block is definitely a thing that some authors, or maybe most authors, go through. I'm not sure. Have you ever experienced it? And if so, like, what do you do to kind of help get out of that?
Well, it is a good question. I think writer's block is an illusion. I don't think it actually exists. And what I mean is this: don't just go walk in, sit down in front of the paper and go, okay, where's my inspiration? It's not going to happen. You're going to sit there and twiddle your thumb. So what I think, say when I struggle in a scene or some section, I don't view it as writer's block. I view it as, I don't know enough about this scene or these characters to write it. It's like sort of meeting someone and saying, okay, tell me everything about your life. Like, that's not going to happen, right?
No.
It would be inappropriate to say, tell me your darkest secrets. We just met. Right? So it's something you kind of gradually, like characters. I'm writing a follow-up to my sci-fi book, Narracon. So there's some sections that I'm like, all right, what is this scene about? And so it's like anything. You have to kind of let it percolate up a little bit. You got to let it, grow like a flower. You don't kick the flower. I'm like, hey, why aren't you growing? What's wrong with you, flower? You have to give these things time to grow. And we all want to force things and get to the finish line and hurry. But it is the journey. I mean, it would be nice to just say, you snap your finger and writing is a straight line. It is not a straight line. And so writer's block, I think, is just, you just don't know the content well enough to craft the scene or that character. And, and sometimes it'll be days or weeks before that scene fleshes itself out. Yeah. I mean, some of the greatest writers, it takes them years to write something. I remember Quentin Tarantino was talking about the movie Inglourious Basterds, which is a great movie.
Yeah.
He had been writing that thing on and off for like 20 years or something.
Yeah.
So it's just the way, the nature of the beast. Just stick with it though. Honor it. Let it sit for a few days. Don't get frustrated. Move on to something else. So that's often what I do is I'll have sort of two pieces. So I'm working on this follow-up to Tanyka, but I have another piece that I'm probably 80% done with. So sometimes also things go a little flat. You've kind of emptied the reservoir on it, and you have to let the reservoir kind of build up. So taking your attention off of that piece, putting it on another piece. Now that piece is fresh, where it had gotten stale a few months ago. And I find that that's a pretty good model for, kind of moving forward. But there are some days you're just not that productive because you're just not that in tune yet with what you're trying to say.
That's definitely very insightful, because that's, again, I think we tend to, or maybe us as the reader doesn't realize the work, and like you're building it's like you're building people and story, and it takes time. Like look at your life. There's life story isn't done yet, so it has to keep building up until
So you're building a world, and then you're building people in it, and you're building sort of the reality of that world, time and space reality, and you're building a storyline, you're building history. So I mean, these things take time, obviously, to get acquainted, and in a sense, it's like it has to trust you enough to reveal itself to you.
Yeah, that's incredible. Honestly, it's incredible, kind of just hearing someone's, like, from your perspective and the author's perspective, just how it works. It's incredible.
Well, it could be different for someone else. That's just how it is for me.
So, is there anything else that you would want to say, put out there? Anything else that you'd like to say?
Yeah. I know it's easy to let it slip away because I've done it. I've allowed it to happen. And you're not happier. You're never going to be happier letting the things you love slip away. You have to find a way to hold on to it. And it is not just about that finish line and that belief that the sky is going to open and doves are going to be released because you finished a book. Great that you did. Reward yourself, celebrate, and keep moving forward. But, this is why you are here on the earth, whatever it might be, whatever your gifts are to bring forward. But hold on to them tightly. Hold on to them tightly. You must honor yourself. That is what I've learned through all this.
I definitely agree. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I think this was an incredible conversation. Do you have anything and everything that you'd like to plug to the listeners? Yeah.
Sure. You can find me at douglasrobinsauthor.com. If you sign up with your little email, you get a free story called Barbecue Dinner, which is one of my favorite stories. It's sort of about like how is a businessman, but he grew up as a single child or an only child, and he married a woman who has a couple children, and he's always felt kind of like an outsider, and his business is failing, and he feels like he can't tell her because he feels like he's failing her, and that he might lose her. So I don't want to say more about it, but I think it's a very sweet piece. And you can also find me on my podcast, The Douglas Robbins Show, and we talk about basically everything, from creativity to mental health and just anything that sort of touches the human condition. So, but it's been a pleasure being on the show.
It's amazing having you on, and I will definitely link to all of that in our show notes.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
So this ends episode 48 of the Next Tape podcast. The Next Tape podcast is available now on all podcast platforms. We also have a website called solo.to/Next Tape podcast. And where else are we at, Tanyka?
We're on Facebook and Instagram at Next Take Podcast, and Twitter and TikTok at Next Take Pod.
And we also have a contact email. Contact us at mikeltanika@gmail.com. So books and more books and more books and more books.
Yes.
Yeah, so we talked about and including our guests here too. So yeah, I actually like to do a part two to this, in
What
our
else will we
future
talk
base.
about?
I don't know, like what books are we reading? Probably what top books that are reading for the whole entire year, next year possibly. I don't
Well,
know,
then I really need to start reading again.
possibly because I still kind of like read here and there, but I mostly read like the nonfiction ones. So so I'm very picky when it comes to like when I go into a chapter and so I'm like I don't know what you I don't know if you're very picky. You probably go into Shoppers Drug Mart and go to read those Harley Quinn books.
What?
Harley Quinn, Harley Quinn. It's Harley Quinn books. You never read those Harley Quinn books, the romance books?
Nah, don't read a lot of romance necessarily. I mean, Daniel's still a maybe, but like, anyways,
You never read a Harley Quinn book?
no, I don't think so.
Those red and white ones. You going in there like those small like pot. No, it's not. They're
No,
not small pocket books, but like they're just like you know.
no.
No. Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I picky, but I mean, as long as a book looks good to me, then I'll read it for the most part. But
Mm,
I mean, if I don't like a book after like the first chapter, if I'm not interested, then like I don't continue. So
mm.
yeah, it just depends. But I haven't been in the chapters in like a year now. I guess the last time I was in the chapters was when I got Butcher and the Run.
I went. I
So
went. I went last week to get a. I think I got a. Uh, oh yeah, I think I got like you call it, a Raptor book, the Toronto Raptors, based on the Toronto Raptors, basically. So
mm.
I got that book, and then I got a book a couple weeks earlier. Oh yeah, The Snowball by Warren Buffett. So got that
uh,
one, and
I
then
mean, yeah,
yeah,
maybe we can do a part two, and then I actually have to start reading
yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Then I got the Peanuts as well. Peanuts, the
like
Peanut
Charlie
movie.
Brown.
Charlie Brown, yeah.
Okay,
Charlie Brown comics.
all right.
Yeah, so yeah. So yeah, me and Tanika are very picky in terms of what we read, what we read. So yeah, I guess that's basically it,
Yeah,
Tanika.
yeah.
Okay. I'm Mikel, and
And I'm Tanika.
we're out until next week. Keep reading, guys.
Yes. Bye.